going through the room there.
Grant, turn that down just a little, please.
How are you?
Oh, fantastic, fantastic. Hopefully you can see our pile of kids back there all spread out in the auditorium.
I see I do. There they are. Hi. Hey, everybody. Am I on a screen on the stage, over the stage? Yeah.
But I just wanted to welcome you. And this is our Ashland High School band. It's actually two groups of students, concert band and symphonic band. Our concert band is performing Paper Cut next month, and our symphonic band is performing Tight Squeeze. And then we've also got Michelle Muro on line 2, and she's from Tri-County that got us the funding to bring you here today. So without any further ado, I wanted you to jump in, and I will hit unmute when there's a reason to.
Well, okay. And what I'd love to do is also, even though the students are back there in the audience, I think the most fun thing to do is I'll give a little bit of background about kind of where these pieces come from and what I do. And then it would be wonderful. I'd really love to take questions from the students. And so what I recommend, since I won't be able to hear them, oh, you've got some already, great. Because, and if they want to come right up to the laptop where you are so I can, see them face to face.
Well, I will invite any daring soul up here, and we made them all submit questions just because we were worried about spacing and distancing and whatnot, but we do have quite a few here when the time comes.
Okay, terrific. And my levels are good. You can hear me just fine? Good. Okay. Well, with that, the magic powers of Zoom, as they are. Good morning, everybody. It is always a delight to be invited to talk about the process of where these pieces you're playing actually, come from. How did they get here? And just for context, I'm going to show you what's out my window so you can see where I am. And this is, I live on a little island off the coast of America. I'm in America, just barely. I'm off of Washington State, right on the British Columbia border. And this is San Juan Island, and this is what I'm looking at right behind the webcam. This is a live view, and if the hummingbirds were coming by right now, you'd see, there they are. There's a hummingbird right on cue. See, they're animatronic. I press a button and then they come. But anyway, I show you this because I think that all of us, when we make music, when we're making art, it's contextual, right? We all live in a world together, and we all come from different places in the world. And I think that when you're playing the music of somebody, it's kind of cool to see, well, where do they come from? And interestingly, the pieces of mine you're playing, really, I wouldn't say they reflect this or look like this. They're not bucolic and, and calm or anything. And they're not about hummingbirds. But I just thought that it would be kind of fun for you to, to have a look at what I'm looking at and what my life is here. There is one connection, by the way. I don't know if any of you who are the ones who are playing Tight Squeeze, because you're playing Tight Squeeze as well, right? One of the bands is, yeah. I don't know if any of you have seen the cover, but there is a picture, and throughout the website, there's a picture of a young gull with a big flounder in its mouth and trying to swallow that flounder, which it eventually did after about 20 minutes. And I'm also, as you can imagine, living here, I'm also an amateur wildlife photographer, and I always have my camera at hand. I was trying to title Tight Squeeze. I had no title for it. I had just finished the piece, literally that day. And I was bopping around to it, and I thought, oh, this is going to be fun. It'll be weird, right? But it'll be different. It'll be fun. And I had no idea what to call it. And all of a sudden, right in front of me here, that young gull lands on a rock in front of me with this big flounder in its mouth. And I'm thinking, how is he going to swallow that? And he just won't let go of it. And so I picked up my camera. I start for 20 minutes, documenting the gull slowly getting that down his craw. He does swallow it. It took a long time. And during this period, I'm talking to the gull, which really, when you think about it, is never a good idea. They are lousy, lousy conversationalists. But nonetheless, I'm talking to the gull. And one of the things I said to the gull, I always remember this, I said, tight squeeze, eh? And then it dawned on me, that's kind of like this piece. A lot of notes, tightly played and squeezing through your instruments. So I decided that then and there to name that piece Tight Squeeze because of the gull. So there you have it. There's a little connection between nature and odd, weird sounding music, because that piece is very up tempo, obviously, and it doesn't look like what's out my window right now, which is so calm. Anyway, as you know from paper, those of you playing paper cut, those of you playing tight squeeze, my thing in the band world, what I love to do, not 100% of the time, but probably 90% of the time, what I love to do is combine you guys, real instruments, real human beings playing their instruments with digital audio. That is my favorite thing to do. And I'll tell you why. Because in addition to the beautiful sounds of your instruments, which I never ever am trying to emulate, I'm not trying to be a bassoon or a euphonium or an oboe. You've got that covered. I'm not trying to do that. But I have a whole nother wealth of sound possibilities, sounds that you can't make here in my studio, in the digital audio. And that's what makes it electroacoustic music. You guys are the acoustic, this part is the electro. And the electro can be anything from sounds that I program here in these digital synthesizers to me grabbing my phone and going around, and as I hear things in the world that interest me, I sample them. I record them on my phone, and then I dump them into my computer, and in a way that I can then trigger them on the keyboard. And I start working with those sounds as musical elements as well. And the cool thing about this, I'm sure some of you are composing, organizing sound in some way, songwriting, improvising, sound design, gestures, whatever you're doing. You all are composers. You may not know it, but you're all capable of doing exactly this. And you don't even need the fancy gear to do it. If you have a phone, if you've got a smartphone with a recorder, if you've got a laptop, you've got all the free software that you need. There's stuff called like Audacity, some of you probably know, Ableton, GarageBand if you're on a Mac, and online there's Soundtrap and Bandcamp, BandLab, and all this. So everything is waiting for you to explore at no cost, and it is so much fun. I lose myself for hours at a time organizing and creating sound, designing sounds. I use a lot of sound design in some of my pieces. Interestingly, with paper cut, I very specifically decided not to put the sounds of the paper in the track because I wanted them to come purely from the band. And I knew that, and one of the big rules with paper cut when you're playing it, you have to hold the paper way above your head. For two reasons. One, because it's a visual piece and it looks really cool. I spent a lot of time designing the call and response of what it looks like, when everybody's, raising their paper. And the other reason is because that's how the audience is going to hear it best. As opposed to if you're just playing it right into your music stand, it's going to be muffled. But if you play it up here, right, people will hear it. It'll transport over the music stands. But I wanted to make sure that all the real paper playing was heard. So I didn't double it in the band, and I didn't need to. So that's one example of choosing not to use sound design. But other times, like I'm just behind me is the fourth movement of a symphony, a 4-movement electroacoustic symphony, wind symphony, that's premiering in July that I'm just wrapping up. And the third movement, just to give you an example, the third movement, believe it or not, I use ping pong balls. In various ways. They don't really sound like ping pong balls, but I use them as a way to create and trigger sound. And so one of the things I do in the beginning of the piece is I have the percussionists gather around 3 of the timpani. Even though there's one timpanist, I get a couple other players around 3 timpani. Each timpani has an inverted cymbal on it. And you drop a ping pong ball try it. If those of you who have access to a kettle drum, drop a ping pong ball into the inverted cymbal resting on the timpani, which makes that sound resonate. It's the coolest sound. And if your kettle drum has a pedal, start pedaling while it's doing that. So in addition to using that sound on the recorded track, a sample of that I had a percussionist friend make for me, I have the percussionist doing it in live time. Later in the piece, I have 3 percussionists on glockenspiel, xylophone, and vibraphone standing at their instruments playing an entire middle 2-minute, 3-minute middle section of this piece with ping pong balls, making these beautiful bouncy chords by bouncing the ping pong balls on the bars, which is really cool sounding and very random, right? And they don't do it from very high up, otherwise the balls are going to go flying, right? So you have to get your technique down with this. They are becoming ping pong ball virtuosi. But in addition, here's another cool thing about using tracks is that not only do I have this unusual live sound, which isn't the loudest sound in the world, right? But it's very present, and I have them located toward the lip of the stage. But additionally, I've got that same thing. I have samples of that I had my percussionist made for me playing those parts and sent it to me. And I processed them so it doesn't sound quite like what the live one sounds like. And I panned them. I did something that we can't do in a live stage, which is literally bouncing, no pun intended, bouncing sound all over the place. So I have the ping pong balls playing on the track doing what the live players are doing, but in a different way. And what that is a psychoacoustic approach to composing that the audience gets this whole, wraparound experience. Same thing, I've done that with in a piece of mine called Liquid Compass. I have the percussionists, again, I'm always picking on the percussionists. They start from the back of the hall at the very beginning of the piece while the track is playing sounds that I made of water dripping into a metal bowl, a big cheap kitchen metal bowl, that you'd make salad in or something. The 6 percussionists are slowly walking down the aisles with metal bowls that have a little bit of water in them and big automated sponges, and they're slowly walking past the audience members down the aisles, dripping water into the bowls, while the audience is hearing a version of this sound on the speakers. Think about that the audience can't tell where the water is actually coming from. And then suddenly, it seems like it's in the air over the speakers, and then next thing they know, it's going right by their ear. And because it's sort of dark, sometimes lighting is used. So these are just different creative ways to use digital audio techniques, ways of using a track to do things, not to pretend to be the band, but to add and complement the band. So, in the case of Tight Squeeze, it's techno percussion. It's that very digital sounding percussion, which I'm not going to get that particular sound from the toms and the snare and whatever live instruments you would have in your arsenal. The Tight Squeeze sounds, as you know, are very electric sounding, very different sounding, very, very electronica. And so they complement each other. And in paper cut, I'm using very synthy kinds of sounds, almost like a cheesy movie score. That's a whole different sound that again doesn't sound like you. So the digital audio track is an additional and equal section in the band, and you put it all together, and it gives you, a really big sound. The track is always played in the hall as loud as the band, if not louder. So it's a very pervasive, equal member. Because, just like the woodwinds have their own sound, and the brass section has its own sound, and even the saxophones within the woodwinds, they've got a very distinct sound, and everybody's got their sound. And so this is just adding a whole nother set of sounds. So this really, as you can tell by my enthusiasm describing it to you, it really, it just really inspires me to be able to work with all this. And so can you, because I circle back to that. Nothing that I'm doing here, there's nothing that you can't do as well. And even like programs like Audacity, for example, totally free, cross-platform. So if you're on a PC or a Mac, it doesn't matter. But those programs have a lot of plugins, and you can play with audio, chop it up, move it around, and you can process it and make that audio sound like anything you want it to sound like. And it's just so great. And especially, during this past year plus, more than a year, of chaos and uncertainty and anxiety, right? We've all been experiencing different levels of that because of what's going on and being, taken out of our daily routines. One of the great things we all have that we share is being musicians, because when we are playing music or writing music, we are so focused on that one thing and we have control over it. This whole world seems to be one of not having a lot of control right now for any number of reasons. And music gives us the gift of self-expression and control. So it is really good for our mental health too. I love focusing in and just getting lost in the work that I'm doing, and it's just and you know, as I like to say, if write the music you want to hear, whatever that is to you, anything you want, you can serve it right up. You can do it. So I just want to encourage all of you to get busy having fun with some of the DAWs, the digital audio workstations that you can acquire for free if you don't already have them. I bet some of you are already doing this, and I'd love to hear from those of you who are. But anyway, I will stop there so we can move on to some questions. But I did want to give you a little bit of that background, of what I do in this room.
Thanks. I wanted to add to what you're saying. At some point in the world, the instruments we use now in band, the brass, wood, and percussion, became standardized, right? So at some point, those were a new invention. Like at some point, like somebody said, hey, check out this new thing. I'm calling it a clarinet. Let's try that with our music. And for quite a while, we kind of were just stuck in that mode of here's what we do. Yeah. And I like that you are adding new things to that repertoire. I like music that kind of expands that role. Once we have that figured out, how to play our instrument and what instruments are common, now we can go somewhere else with it. And that's one of the reasons why, with this being a year as strange as it is, why not expose the students to big, different, strange at times ideas? And that's where we stumbled across your pieces and your website. So I was very excited that we had the opportunity to try these different things, because most of us don't get a chance to do something beyond standard like band repertoire. And this is the year to go for it.
This is the year. And of course, since people have been hybrid and online and recording from their bedrooms and whatever, having a track, of course, is incredibly helpful. A click and an accompaniment track, so that if you are rehearsing at home under normal circumstances, or sometimes recording your part at home this year, it just happens to be well suited for that, which is really fun. And the other thing, I love that you have this attitude, this great perspective of, everything was new once, right? And also the concomitant thought with that is that we're not throwing anything out. It's not either or. It's both. And just the way I feel the same way, by the way, about technology. It's not that we're never going to go back to live performance again. Of course we want live performance. No one is saying that digital is better than live performance. It's just different. And there are different things you can do digitally. And when you use them both together, it can be fascinating, like multimedia concerts where the band is live, the audience is live, everybody's live, but there are also elements happening on social media and on videos and with lighting and other things, that are using technology to heighten the experience of the music and of the concert. So it's never either or. So I like your attitude very much about this. Bassoons. I think one of the oldest instruments must be the bassoon, by the way. I'd have to look that up, but I think that might win the cake for being a very one that hasn't changed very much over the years.
That wins the award for most thumbs necessary to play. Where are my symphonic band flutes? Just wave for a sec. This is a question from them. Our symphonic band flutes. They want to know, did you always want to be a composer? And if not, what got you there? How did you become a composer doing that for a living?
I always believe this. I'm like a demented person. I knew from the time I was in high school, from the time I was 15, that I wanted to be a composer. I'm not sure I knew actually what that job description meant, other than writing a lot of music. I don't think I knew what it entailed. I certainly didn't know anything about publishing or the business side. I knew a little bit about copyright, but all I knew is that I loved writing music, and that's what I wanted to do in some way, shape, or form. And I grew up in New York City, in Manhattan. As I love to say, on an island half the size of the one I live on now, just with a lot more people. I started writing when I was about 9. Not very well, but I did write. I loved it. And so when I was 10, I asked my parents, could I have piano lessons? And they said, are you going to practice? we're not going to just pay for lessons if you're not going to practice. I said, yes, 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 I really am. And I wanted to play the piano and learn how to play it. I had no interest in being a performer. Still don't. Never was a pianist performer, other than a few rare occasions. But I loved the instrument, and I also realized at an early age that having facility on a keyboard would probably be very helpful for composing, because you've got all the notes, kind of, not all of them, but a lot of notes, 88 of them, in front of you, and you can work out harmonies and see them visually, which is not to say that people who play monophonic instruments like the trombone or the oboe or the flute aren't great composers too. It's just that this gives you a little bit of a toolbox to play with. And so I took piano lessons, and then I think I had my first formal composition lessons when I was 15. And that's when I realized, okay, this is really what I want to do. So that's how it is. Sometimes things come, they tell you. You don't decide. They kind of come to you and they grab you, these professions, and they say, this is what you're going to be doing. It gives you joy. And I think the key thing, and for all of you, as you go forward in your lives, may you all be lucky enough to find something that you really resonate with, that makes you happy to do, that you enjoy doing, that you want to get up out of bed in the morning and do. And may that thing be something you're naturally talented at doing. Because it's interesting. I see the world sometimes like two bubbles in those Venn diagrams we've seen, where there are a lot of things in life, and I hope this is true for you. There are a lot of things that we love doing, really love doing, but maybe we're not that good at it, but that should never stop us from doing it. And case in point with me would be, within the music world at least, there are a lot of other things, but songwriting. I've written a lot of pop songs. I love writing pop songs. I could write pop songs all day long. Fun. But writing a mediocre pop song, okay, that's not that hard. Writing a really good one is very hard. And I realized early on, okay, it doesn't stop me from doing it. I can do it anytime I have time to do it, but I'm not going to try to make my living doing it, right? I was aware that just because I love doing it didn't mean I was great at it, that it was going to be the right fit. But the key thing is to find what you really love doing, that you also internally, when you're brutally honest with yourself, that you feel like you have some aptitude at, that professionally. And when those two things come together in that circle overlap, the things, and the other circle, by the way, are things that you're really good at doing, but maybe you don't love doing that much, right? Like you could get a job doing you'd be great at it, but would you be happy? Would you be happy? And if the answer is then maybe that's not for you, because just because you can do it well doesn't mean that's what your life profession should be. When those two things come together, the things you love and the things you do well, and they overlap in that Venn diagram, and there's that sliver in the middle, woohoo, that's your happy spot. That's where you're probably destined to have a very happy life. And so that's sort of what happened with me, I think, is that I have a lot of interests in all different arenas. I've done a lot of volunteer work, and I serve on a lot of boards of directors, and I get very involved in issues that matter to me. And that includes a lot of civil liberties work, especially back in the 1990s in Los Angeles. Well, I was living in Los Angeles for 24 years. Civil liberties, and also, at no surprise, marine sciences. I'm very active with the marine sciences world. Here in Friday Harbor, we have one of the preeminent marine research labs in the country, and I'm on their board. And so these are things that I'm very, very deeply involved with and interested in, but I'm not trying to make my living doing them. So I think the key thing with having a happy life is, find the thing that you do really well for which you can get paid as well, and then keep doing other things as well. Don't just be one-dimensional. Fill your life with interesting pursuits, and also fill your life with good people. The people with whom you surround yourself are going to make or break your experience as a human, and do your best to bring out the best in everybody around you as well. So it's a two-way street, but choose people around you well, choose your friends well. And, we've all had experiences where we didn't, and it hurts. But I think the people in our lives, and, us doing the best for others and making sure that good people are around us, that's a very significant thing. And I know it doesn't sound like I'm talking about music, but I am. Because music making, and, whether you're playing the instrument or writing the notes for the instruments, it comes from who you are as a person. It's not a bifurcated, separate, compartmentalized thing. It's not like I'm not a stick figure composer on legs, right? The music that you're playing comes from me. I'm the product, really. It's my heart. The music you write comes from you, and it has your specific viewpoint and perspective from living your life. So everything to me is very holistically connected.
That's great. I wanted to just quick survey out in the crowd. How many of you have ever composed anything, like just on your own for fun, or serious? I know I see a couple percussionist hands up too. They really like when it gets around marching band season. They come up with some cool ideas for cadences and fills between things. We've got a great district here that embraces all those sort of things. We have a big jazz band program, so we have students improvising a lot. We have theory classes. We have technology classes, just trying to get kids those opportunities. So I'm glad you hit on that with careers and things. Let's single out, where are my tubas? Tubas, yay, wave, okay. In concert flutes and oboe. They asked this same question. Actually, several groups asked this same question, and it puzzles them because band is done a certain way, and this is how it works, and thou shalt not change. But they ask, how come your piece, your music doesn't have a key signature? That really bothered them. All these notes are there with accidentals, so they had a hard time coming to terms with that. So if you'd like to talk about your process with that would be interesting.
Sure. Well, let's take a piece like Tight Squeeze. Changes keys. It's very chromatic, and it is what I would call a pantonal piece, not atonal. Atonal means no tonality at all. Pantonal means all. Pan is from the Greek, pan, all. And it means you're using all the notes. And you're using them in all orders. And let's talk about Tight Squeeze because it's a great example of this. The reason it's not in a key signature, it could maybe be in a key signature for a few bars at a time, but it is a 12-tone row. Have you talked about that? Because if you haven't, let's talk about that. Okay. There is a history.
Please do freak them out for a second.
What?
Feel free to freak them out about 12
Excellent.
tones. I think they deserve it.
This is great. No, this is, Tight Squeeze obviously is a bop. It's a groove piece. But I did something very tricky in it. You probably have noticed, lack of key signature and all, that it is a highly chromatic piece. I use every note in the scale. And the reason for that is, first of all, it's what I heard, at least up until 8 notes into the melody. But there is a historic tradition that you should read up about from over 100 years ago that started in Europe, in the Second Viennese School, with composers. I hope you've heard of Arnold Schoenberg, Anton Webern, people like that, and then a little later Stefan Wolpe and Ralph Shapiro, and one of my teachers, Ursula Mamlock, who just died a few years ago in her 90s. She's from Berlin. Anyway, there's a long tradition of over 100 years ago, or about 100 years ago, actually. There were a bunch of composers like Schoenberg, probably the most famous of them, who decided they wanted to escape from the confines of tonality as all of Western music had dictated for a very long time in classical European music, Beethoven, Haydn, Brahms, right? All of that. They wanted to make a left at the lights, so to speak, very suddenly. And they did. They threw the tonality out entirely. And they created a system called 12-tone serial music, or row music, using a tone row. However, there are many terms, interchangeable terms for it. But think about a grid of 12 by 12 grid. And going across, you put, our Western scale has 12 notes. We're very limited compared to the rest of the world. And if you are not already familiar with the music of Indonesia or Africa or India or China, get familiar with it, because that's what most of the world has, a far more expansive musical vocabulary than we do. We have 12 notes. They've got a lot of microtonality and many notes in between each of those notes. It's beautiful. But we have 12. So you take one of those notes, and they cannot repeat themselves, across. And then if you're really going whole hog on the whole 12-tone thing, which I did not in Tight Squeeze, my tone row is horizontal. But then vertically, starting with each one of those notes, you fill in a different combination in a different order of other 12 notes for each. And then you end up with this grid from which you're choosing and creating your chords and your melodic patterns and etc. It's a game. It's like Sudoku for music. I don't know how else to describe it. It's but the cool thing is with Tight Squeeze, what I did was this. I didn't set out to write a 12-tone piece. I got a little of the groove program. By the way, I don't just hold my finger down on something. I program every one of those percussion notes by hand. So I put that track together note by note. So I had a few bars of it going. I knew kind of the feel I wanted to have. And then I was sort of improvising a melody on top. I got about 8 notes in and da 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 da, and sort of up there. And I didn't know where to go next. I didn't know what I was going to do next. And I looked at the notes, which I really don't think theoretically at all when I'm writing. I write by ear, even though I'm a very trained musician. I write by ear. I write the music I want to hear. I looked at the notes and I realized, wow, none of them repeat themselves. I didn't plan it that way, but none of them repeat themselves. And that's when I decided, let's go for broke. Let's see if I can find the right order for the last 4 notes, and let me slot them in there. And it didn't take me too long to come up with the rest of that theme, which you now know because you play it many times. That theme, as you know, changes a tonal center within it, a few times. And within the piece, that theme appears in different tonal centers different times. So unless I were to change the key signature constantly, it's just sort of pointless to have a key signature. Contemporary music does not, many of us writing concert music do not use key signatures because we are pantonal. We are not in the 18th century or even parts of the more tonally centric, 20th and even 21st century, writing pieces that are very predictable in their harmonies. A lot of us write music that is much more chromatic. So it doesn't make sense to be in a key signature. Sometimes, a few of my pieces I do put in key signatures. I probably could have put, I thought Paper Cut wasn't a key signature. Is it not? I could have put it in one. I think it's in B flat, basically. I
think so. I think it's Tight Squeeze that.
Yeah, it's Tight Squeeze is not in a key signature. Yeah, but now you know the reason why, because that's a chromatic piece and it flits around to all these different tonal centers. So this is contemporary music, and I don't want anybody to ever feel limited by the music theory of the past. It served Bach very, very well. It served Mozart very, very well. Those are very different kinds of pieces that they modulate. They do go to different related keys. Almost always the keys are related. If you look at your circle of fifths and your theory, you're looking at relative minors, parallel majors, relative majors, all of that. Great. 1, 4, 5, 1, all these traditional progressions, and they still sound great to this day, and I use them all the time in my own work, just with different notes piled on top of them. But now our language has really expanded, just like the way we've talked about technology expanding the scope of an ensemble. Our language musically has expanded very beautifully over many years. So that is why no key signatures. And by the way, it's actually really good for you guys to all learn to read those accidentals, because that's real music. That's, again, if you're going to be playing chamber music, and as you get better and better, and some of you I'm sure are playing at a very high level already, that if you're playing contemporary pieces, many of them are not going to be in key signatures, because those bar to bar we're changing. One bar it's a B flat, the next bar it's a B natural. And if you did put a piece like Tight Squeeze in a key signature, you'd be looking at almost the same number of accidentals. They'd be reversals, So there you go.
That's great. Where are my symphonic French horns? They got the next question. Oh, they're all hiding. Good. Actually, it's 2 questions. The first one's really, really important. They want to know if you named the Tight Squeeze bird.
No, but you guys can. We could call him Fred. I don't know. I did not name the Tight Squeeze.
All right,
bird.
we get exclusive naming rights. You heard it here first. Okay.
Yeah.
Their real question was sort of a 2-part. How do you know what you want your music to sound like, and when do you know it's finished? Like, how do you know you're just like, I'm done composing, that one's done?
Yeah, that is a great question. Really great question. You trust your gut. And let's start with the beginning, with the first part, like, how do you start? And where do you get ideas from? How do you know what to write? And that often, whoops, I've frozen for some reason. Can you hear me at least? even though you can't
We
see
can
me?
we can hear you, but
Good.
your
I
screen
have
is
no
frozen.
idea why I froze. That's really weird. I have a 1 gig fiber optic connection here. Um, huh. Let me restart my video. Let me stop it and start again.
Yep. You can log out and back in too if that works.
Yeah, that's really weird. There we go. Let's try it again. See, I'm coming back, I promise. Hold on. I Here we go. Oh, that worked like a charm. Sorry, I have no idea what's going on here. Um, 1 sec. We're gonna try this one more time, and then I'll log out and log back in again because I'm just about to talk about something. But you can still hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. I'm just gonna keep talking and finish this thought, and then I might log out and log in again if the video might catch up. But I look better like this, actually. This is an improvement, especially this early in the morning. No, I start every commission because working composers work on commission, and every commission starts with with the knowledge of your instrumentation, like what ensemble have you been asked to write for. So in this case, let's say wind band, and they almost always tell you what duration piece they're looking for. There's a very big difference between a 3-minute piece and a 25-minute piece. In a 3-minute piece, it's like a pop song where you can only go so many places, so to speak, before before. Hold on, I'm going to try a different camera here. You can only go so many places before you have to wrap up. So it's very much like a pop song. You got a chorus, a bridge, a theme, a hook, boom. You hear them repeatedly, and that's better than Black Box, I figured. And there you go. With a longer piece, you can go a lot of different places and take people on a bigger emotional journey. And what is key when you're thinking about what to write about is what kind of emotion are you trying to convey. Tight Squeeze, obviously, is a fun, up-tempo piece that is not, it's not a dirge, it's not a eulogy, it's not sad. I was just looking to do something fun. Paper Cut has a little bit of tension in it. It's minor and da da dum bum ba-dum, it's a little more intense sounding. So I was going for that. I thought that would be kind of fun. I've got other pieces, of course, that are very, sort of elegiac and slow and sad and thoughtful and pensive and melancholy. So so you think about the emotion. And for those of you looking to start writing a piece, that's always a great place to start. Think about what emotion do you want to convey to your musicians playing it and to your audience. And then from there, what I do? I write down adjectives that describe that emotion, and that really helps get me started. I write down words, and sometimes if I have a sense of the shape of the piece as it starts to unfold in my head, because I do a lot of the writing in my head, I will write down sentences, almost like a play-by-play of a sporting event, on AM radio or something. The horns do this and the piccolo comes in and yada yada, and it's kind of fun. And then another thing that I do is I love to sometimes, not always, but sometimes I make abstract drawings of what I'm hearing in my head. And those abstract drawings are very helpful for just looking at the gesture of what the intensity or lack thereof is, with no notes and no rhythms. But then once I look at that picture, I might start feeling some rhythms. And here you might wonder, why are there a lot of mixed meters in some of my pieces? Not Tight Squeeze, and I think Paper Cut only has one, but some of my other pieces change meter every other measure. And the reason is because the flow of the music is irregular, and I don't want people knowing necessarily where the downbeat is all the time. So to get a very human flow that is artistically pleasing to me, I change the meters. So I put all that in underneath the drawing sometimes. And then only then, after I've spent a lot of time away from the keyboard, will I then go and start in that. By that I mean typing keyboard as well as playing keyboard. Then I'll start inputting some of my ideas, and away we go. So that's one of the ways to get started. And in terms of where do you stop, that becomes an issue of, sometimes it's not so much the music as it is the orchestration, understanding that the two are really inseparable. And let's say right now I'm writing a form-based piece. The last movement of the symphony, I chose a classical form, just like Papa Haydn, Joseph Haydn would have done. 4 movements, where the first movement is sonata allegro. If you haven't studied these forms, I'm sure you will. The second movement is a lyrical pensive movement, and the third movement is a minuet and trio, which is a slow, stately kind of dance, and it's a piece within a piece. And the fourth movement that I'm finishing now is a rondo. And a rondo, let's take a rondo form. It's A, B, A, C, A, D, A, right? A 7-part rondo. It keeps flinging itself, boomeranging back to the first initial motif and motivic idea. And it's very fun to write with a form. I don't usually write with a form, but for this piece I am. And so what am I doing orchestrationally? When A first starts, it starts with a moderate orchestration. That will be enough to get people's attention. But as it keeps coming back, it morphs. It's the same material, but it builds and builds. And what I've planned in my head is that the final, return of A, and also since it's the end of the symphony, is going to be very thickly orchestrated. It's going to be big, big, big. And that's how I know how to end. I'm thinking about the shape of something as well as the music. Like the form will sometimes be very helpful for telling you what the music should be. And then in terms of the shape, the orchestration and the textures will tell you where you're going, because you can create any arc you want. The first movement of this symphony starts really loud with a full orchestra, like boom, everybody's playing, and hits you over the head, like wakes you right up, like, okay, listen to this now. So, you can choose the shape of your piece however you want to. Start soft, get louder in the middle, end up soft again, start loud, get soft, start soft, get loud, right? And go up and down those hills. I'm going to try my other camera one more time here while you ask another question. Let's see.
Great.
If this will
Yeah,
work.
I think they've enjoyed looking at the hummingbirds.
Yeah.
They're doing
I
pretty
don't
well
wanna be-
for 100 kids sitting still for an hour. It's pretty tough.
Yeah.
They're troopers.
Yeah.
Our symphonic baritones, where are you? Boom. They asked a great question. They had checked out your website and looked at some of your resume and found out you did lots of things for shows or movies. And they want to know, what's your favorite character or kind of character from shows and movies that you like to compose pieces for?
Oh, wow. I guess I like the complicated dark ones. The difficult characters are fun because
Just like our baritone section.
there
Here.
you go. Exactly. The more complicated and dark, the more fun it is to write music. And in fact, my favorite music to write, and again, the first 2 movements of this current symphony are really dark, very emotional and very dark. And then everything comes up into the light with the last 2 movements. But I happen to love writing very dark, dark music. It's really fun. Let me try logging out just for 1 second. I know we're getting, toward the end, but we still have another, 10, 15 minutes. So let me log out really quickly and I'll log back in again. See if I can fix this, okay? I will be right back.
Hey!
So this is what it takes for me to get a big round of applause.
There
I like
you go.
that. I am so sorry. I was sending you emails throughout this, Marty.
Yeah.
Just saying, I'm trying to get back on. I have no idea what happened. Anyway, I don't want to waste our time. So, but that happened at a good time. I had to log off right after I gave you that long explanation, so you could wind up your next question.
Yes. Excellent. Excellent. So we've got so many good questions. Symphonic clarinets. Where are you? Where are you? There you go. Do you have any special tricks or techniques you use when writing music to ensure instruments blend well with each other?
Ooh, wow. That's a very sophisticated question.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Clarinets are sophisticated.
I tell you, very sophisticated reads there. The technique is basically it's one of experience. For the first and foremost, for any kind of composing or orchestrating, you start by using your ear. And that starts by having listened your whole life to a lot of music, having been aware of what sounds good to your ear, what seems to be pleasing, learning about the actual instruments and how they perform in different registers, because the tessitura, as it's called, the area of, like clarinet's a great example, but actually every instrument is, they sound different in different octaves, right, in different playing ranges. The tessitura of an instrument is going to determine how you use it orchestrationally and for what reason. Bassoon, for example, is such a huge range. And if I want to put it down in the basement at its lowest register, that's going to be for a certain kind of purpose. But it can soar, as you all know, in the very high register and be quite beautiful and lyrical. And so combinations of instruments are like that. You think about, what are they going to sound like together? How are those frequencies that they make going to resonate together? Am I looking to create a muddy chaos kind of sound where everything's agitating against each other, or which would be put everybody kind of in the same registration, and you get kind of mud, but and that's bad if you're not doing it intentionally. But if you're looking for mud, put all your trombones and horns playing in the same, little cluster of notes. Or if you're looking to space something out and have it really soar, separate them by octaves. One of the tricks with string writing, for example, is 2 octaves difference between instruments, 2, sometimes 3. It makes everything just open wide up. So it's those things. You're using your ear, but you're also learning an awful lot through experience about the instruments and what they sound like. I don't believe really. I'm very non-traditional, as you've already figured out. I don't really believe in, quote unquote, the rule books of what you're supposed to do. I think that's what gets us into boring music, because everybody is always orchestrating the same way. I don't think that you have to do things always by the rules and stay inside the box of how band music or orchestral music should be orchestrated, quote unquote. I try new things all the time. It doesn't always work, but sometimes you come across some really cool, new sound. And I think it's important for artists to always experiment and not feel like you have to, stay inside the lines or adhere to rules that were made hundreds of years ago. The world changes, and I celebrate anybody who wants to, try something different. But
That's
learn
great.
what the instruments do.
You touched on this a little bit earlier, but our symphonic band percussion, where are you guys? We've That's the quietest the drum line has ever been, ever. Their concern, and you had touched on this, was the value of having the live percussion with a piece that also has a track with percussion doubling it.
Yeah.
How do we console the drummers to know that their part's still valuable?
You matter, because your sounds are very different timbres than the timbres I'm using in any of these pieces. I think about that a lot. The biggest issue for me as the composer is to make sure that everybody stays in sync with the track, because like Tight Squeeze is a groove track. Everybody's got to be right, watching your fearless leader on the podium like a hawk. And ideally, I always say, if you have extra earbuds, for the percussionist to actually have a click in their ear as well, just like the conductor does, that's awesome. That will really keep people together. But failing that, you set the groove, because the band is actually going to hear you, the percussion line, more than it's going to hear the track coming over some crappy stage monitors. Those are just sort of for reference. But the reality is that if you if you get off the beat, everybody's going to fall off the cliff with you. And so everybody's going to follow you. So I think the hardest thing, it's not the sound, because I'm creating different sounds for you to play than in the piece. But the hardest thing is staying totally locked in the pocket with where that groove and where that rhythm is really falling along with the track. That takes a little bit of practice. In the case of Tight Squeeze, I will admit, and maybe I owe you percussionists an apology. I didn't give you nearly as much fun syncopations and things to play as I put in the track, and that was because I was a little afraid that, because the syncopations have to be so tight in order to work at that tempo, I was afraid it might not come off. And so for the most part, you're playing easier, straighter lines. So I apologize for that. But I was trying to keep everybody really together. But the timbre of what you're doing matters a lot. So
Great. Our let's see, who am I going to call up next? our symphonic band trumpets. Yeah. What's some of the hardest parts about writing this type of music? Just putting it all together. What do you struggle with as you come up with these things?
Great question. These are great questions, folks. It's a three-ring circus behind me. The big monitor here tells the story. There are four monitors here. There's a lot going on here, and a lot of visual information, a lot of sonic information. This big monitor represents all of you and all of the tracks I'm working with. So when I'm writing a large piece like this, I've got 35 to 40 tracks of musicians, and then staves, tracks, whatever you want to call it, and really more because I've got other sounds going on. And then I've got a whole bunch of samples and electronic sounds that I'm working with. That's probably 2/3 of that screen underneath the band. The samples I'm using at the top here are never going to be heard in the track. They're just for me to compose with, for me to hear the basic frequencies of the instruments, so that I don't step on your toes, so to speak. Because good orchestration and good engineering have the same rule: don't have too many frequencies in the same place. And so everybody's got their shelf where they need to be on. And that's why a wind band sounds so amazing, right? Because you've got so many different registrations playing together. It's a beautiful, beautiful, powerful sound. Or an orchestra, or whatever ensemble. So in my case, I'm slotting these in just so I'm writing around them and making sure that when I have the French horn playing, you're going to hear that beautiful frequency. The hardest part is I'm writing the music, and I'm also coordinating with the track. I'm writing the track at the same time. It's just another section in the band. So I'm orchestrating the track at the exact same time as the instruments. And I have to then be a recording engineer. I've got to record, mix down, master, engineer all these tracks. And I have to do the music preparation. So it gets out of this is Digital Performer, which is like GarageBand or anything. It's the Lamborghini version of it. And I export from here when I'm somewhat done depending on the piece. And I go into my computer here, my laptop here, and I open up a notation program called Sibelius, which is like Finale or Dorico or MuseScore. And I then have to translate everything so that musicians can read it. What I'm often doing as well, because I like to see the whole the music and the music paper in front of me, I'm doing most of my orchestration in Sibelius. So it's not necessarily here at all. It's just I make little notes and markers of what I want to do. I'm getting the track right along with writing for the instruments, knowing what I'm going to write and laying in some of the lines. Then when I get into Sibelius, I'm finishing a large amount of the instrumental work there, because I'm working with actual notes that look like notes and making it readable by all of you. Then there's the parts preparation, right, and the mixing of the tracks, and it's a three-ring. So creating the click track for the conductor, creating additions on the click track. Sometimes I did this last night on a track. Sometimes I add my voice on certain bar numbers because it helps the conductor or anybody recording at home know exactly where they are in certain kinds of pieces. Tight squeeze and paper cut don't need that, but other kinds of pieces do. So it's.
I don't want to interrupt, but
yeah.
I've got the bulk of the students have to head out.
Okay, we can
I'd
wrap
like to
up.
ask another question or two if we can. But those of you that have to get going, get going. If anyone
Sure,
wants
and
to
I've got to
stick
get
around,
going at
we're going to ask a
8:32.
couple
It's
more.
fine, but basically, just to wrap up, it's a very complicated job, And if I were writing, a duet for two monophonic instruments, it would be so much easier. But I just wanted to give you guys, an idea, and there they all go! Yay! Thanks, guys, for letting me talk to you.
I wanted to ask a question that our trombones asked. How do you start a piece? Like you go from nothing to, I've got this idea. I know a lot of kids, they're like writing papers and things, and it's sometimes it's hard to just get started and then the ideas start to flow. So any
It was
thoughts
what I
on
was
that?
saying before about I sit there on the sofa here, I'll sit over there, and I imagine what kind of journey do I want to take everybody on, and I'll write down those words and make those pictures and think about the gestures and think about the duration I have, and map out kind of a general rough idea of what I can do in that amount of time. you know, that's it. It's sort of just let your mind go free. Are you a composer also? Yeah.
Yeah, I've never done a big symphonic work or anything. Typically, it's smaller pieces. Oh, there's the bell.
Yeah. I'll let you
Um,
guys go. I'm so sorry for that 5 minute delay there.
no,
I
this was actually a great experience for the kids, and we've saved it so we can review it and
good.
listen to it again. Since I am recording this, I just wanted to take a moment to thank Michelle again,
Thank you,
at
Michelle.
Tri-County and the Ohio Arts Council for their grant that made this very easy for me.
Thank
Um,
you.
so I appreciate your willingness to come and talk to our kids as well.
Oh, I think it's so important for working professionals to engage with students. I think that is so important, and I really appreciate that you invited me in to do this. I hope some of them got something out of this, because it's really fun for me to share my passion with them about this, and maybe show them what's possible. So
Well, you were
Well,
phenomenal. I wish all of our kids could have heard you talking about
oh,
your
thanks.
music. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank
thanks
you,
again,
Michelle.
and enjoy the rest of your day because I know it's just begun.
It's just begun. Take very good care. Stay well. Okay. Bye.
Bye.